You're not gonna believe this, but a couple of fake HOA enforcers dragged my wife out of our own house, in broad daylight, right onto our front porch. They were dressed like the real deal, uniforms, fake badges, official-looking papers. They acted like they were the law. But I got home just half a minute earlier than they expected, and that tiny window changed everything. Just wait till you hear how this whole nightmare came apart, and how justice came crashing down harder than anyone ever saw coming. The sky was painted in the kind of deep orange haze you get right before night falls, and I was heading home with that worn-out, satisfied feeling you only get after finally earning something real. After months of chasing it, the deal I'd been working on had finally closed. Lying across the back seat of my dusty blue pickup was a long, narrow box. My reward. Inside it? A brand new hunting shotgun. It wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol, a gift to myself. Like a quiet pat on the back from the universe. For once, the world had slowed down just enough to let me breathe. I loosened my grip on the steering wheel. The past year had been hell. Hospitals. Panic. Endless nights watching my wife, Lisa, turn into a shadow of the woman I married. But now, she was back. Not all the way, sure, still a little pale, still tired, but she was laughing again. Cooking. Walking barefoot through her flower beds in the front yard, just like she used to. We'd even started talking about a road trip in the fall. Nothing big, just open roads, cheap motels, and no hospital beeps. It felt like we were finally getting a second shot at life. That's what that evening felt like. Right up until it didn't. The moment I turned onto Maple Drive, something in my gut clenched. There were two vehicles parked at the curb in front of our house. Neither of them looked familiar. They weren't marked. Both were dull gray, like primer-coated tanks, windows tinted dark. No plates. At first, I figured maybe it was city inspectors or some kind of utility work. But then I saw them, two guys standing on my porch in mismatched tactical vests, with HOA enforcement slapped across the backs in cheap lettering. Right away, my stomach dropped. That wasn't right. We didn't have any HOA patrols around here. Our neighborhood didn't sign off on anything like that. I knew the board, we would have all heard. A tight knot started twisting in my chest. And then I saw her. She was barefoot on the porch, arms pinned behind her back, panic written all over her face. One of the men, a bulky guy with a square jaw and a face like he'd never cracked a real smile, had her by the wrist, shoving her against the wall. She tried to talk, but her head whipped back like he'd snapped at her. The second guy was circling her, slow and tense, like a shark. Then it happened. The first one grabbed her hair, jerked her back hard, like she was a threat. Like she was less than human. Everything around me froze. My hands locked on the wheel. The truck engine kept humming, but I couldn't hear a damn thing. Not the birds. Not the breeze. Not even the soft tick of the dashboard. My whole world shrank to that one awful image. My front porch, my wife's terrified eyes, and that stranger's hand yanking her by the roots. 1 second. Then another. Then another. The box in the back seat, it didn't feel like a gift anymore. It wasn't a prize. It was necessary. A promise. My fingers tightened around the gear shift. I didn't snap, I set. Like concrete. This wasn't gonna end how they thought it would. I didn't park. Didn't hesitate. Didn't think. The truck jumped the curb, roaring up onto the lawn in a spray of dirt and grass, like it had a mind of its own. The moment my tires left the road, something in me clicked into place. All the years of holding back, being calm in boardrooms, on phone calls, at hospital bedsides, gone. My boots hit the ground before the engine finished dying. I ripped the back door open without even thinking. My hands were faster than my thoughts. Steady, automatic. I pulled the shotgun from its box like I'd done it 100 times before. Every motion felt precise, mechanical. Like I'd trained for this moment and didn't even know it. All the noise around me faded, until the only thing I could hear was Lisa's voice, strained, muffled, cracking. That sound, it's burned into me. It wasn't just fear. Or pain. It was something deeper, like the world itself had betrayed her. I hit the steps just as the bigger guy jerked her forward by the arm, rough, careless, like she meant nothing. She stumbled, knees knocking the wood, her whole body limp from fighting. The other guy, thinner and coiled tight like a live wire, popped open the trunk of their SUV. Too smooth. Too quick. Like this wasn't their first time. Like they'd planned this. Like they'd done it before. And my mind, it recorded every detail. I didn't miss a thing. Lisa's hair was stuck across her face. One of her sandals was gone. And there, on her cheek, a blotch of red. Not brand new, but recent. My stomach turned. She wasn't screaming anymore. That's what hit me the hardest. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Her eyes had glazed over, locked onto the sky, like she'd already stopped hoping for anything to change. That's when something in me changed too. I stopped moving like a man, and started moving like something else. My breathing slowed. My grip on the shotgun locked in. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. That would come later. What I felt was focus. Pure, unshakable focus. This wasn't some misunderstanding. These guys didn't get the wrong address. They weren't confused about a made-up HOA complaint over garbage cans or fence height. This wasn't a mix-up, it was a setup. It was planned. Intentional. Organized. They had no badges. No clipboards. No questions. No warnings. They weren't neighbors. They weren't the law. They were worse. And this place, my yard, my porch, my wife, that was the line. They didn't know whose home they'd stepped into. They didn't know who they were dealing with. And they sure as hell didn't know I'd come home 30 seconds early, with a loaded shotgun, and nothing left to lose. I stepped forward, 1 foot at a time. Not rushing. Not hesitating. The shotgun felt heavy in my hands, solid, grounding. Like it had weight beyond the metal. Like it was holding me steady. The dry grass crunched beneath my boots, slow and sure, and with every step, I closed the gap between me and those bastards. The bigger one turned first. He looked surprised, but not fast enough. Before he could blink or breathe, I had the cold steel of the 12-gauge pointed dead center at his chest. He froze, hands twitching like maybe they wanted to move, but couldn't. The world held its breath. Then the second guy let go of Lisa. Her arm dropped to her side, limp, like it didn't even belong to her. He reached for his waist, fast. I didn't wait. The blast shattered the silence like a thunderclap. The echo tore through the neighborhood. Birds scattered. A car alarm wailed in the distance. The man hit the ground with a sick thud, crying out, his hand clutched to his forearm. Blood soaked through his sleeve like a signal flare. He wasn't dead, but he was out of the game. The other guy flinched. I turned. Swung the stock hard. The first hit slammed into his shoulder. The second cracked across his ribs. The sound was thick and final, like a door being slammed shut forever. He went down, groaning, gasping, head spinning from the impact. Couldn't even catch his breath. I stood over him. My chest heaved, deep, hard breaths. But I didn't shake. Didn't shout. I kept the barrel pointed straight, held steady like a warning, drawn in the dirt. And when I finally spoke, my voice came out low. Rough. Barely human. Who are you? No answer. Just the sound of broken lungs sucking in dust. The guy on the ground whimpered. The guy who'd taken the shot was shaking now, his injured arm trembling as he tried to press the pain down. The other one coughed up blood, fingers brushing his lip, eyes hazy and distant. Behind me, Lisa stood by the fence like she was glued there, hands gripping the wood so tight it looked like she might collapse if she let go. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Just breath. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, wide, empty, begging for it all to be over. I lowered the shotgun just a little, but I didn't let it go. My grip was still tight. My mind still sharp. No part of me relaxed. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly who these guys were, and why they'd come here. Minutes passed, felt like hours. Then, finally, sirens. The silence shattered. That sharp, rising wail cut through the air, growing louder with every second. Red and blue lights bounced off the houses, casting shadows across every wall. Squad cars screeched to a halt, parking like a blockade. Doors flew open. Officers spilled out fast, practiced, hands hovering near their holsters, eyes scanning every inch of Willow Street. My street didn't look like my street anymore. It looked like a war zone. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Someone near the corner already had their phone out, filming. But I didn't move. The shotgun hung at my side now, barrel down, brushing the grass. I slowly lifted both hands, fingers spread, showing them I wasn't a threat. I didn't speak. Didn't flinch. I didn't have to. Everything they needed to know was written all over my face. I wasn't confused. I wasn't afraid. And I sure wasn't sorry. They surrounded me carefully. Weapons drawn but not aimed. One officer stepped forward, his radio crackling at his shoulder. His voice was calm but firm. "Sir, step away from the weapon." I gave him a slow nod. One clear motion. Then I crouched and placed the shotgun on the ground, gently. Like it was something sacred. Like I was laying down a child. Then I stepped back. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't shake. I told them everything. From the second I saw Lisa on the porch to the exact moment I pulled the trigger. I didn't add flair. No theatrics. Just the truth. A crime had been in motion, and I stopped it. The officers listened, sharing sharp, quiet glances between them. Then another vehicle pulled up, a black SUV with dark windows. Out stepped a man in plain clothes. Clean-shaven. Solid. The kind of guy who'd seen too much to be rattled by anything. Detective Ramon Martinez. His badge swung on a chain around his neck as he scanned the scene like a man built for chaos. He didn't say much to the uniforms. Just walked straight toward the two guys on the ground. The moment his eyes landed on the broader one, the fake HOA enforcer still groaning in the grass, his whole face changed. His jaw locked. Voice low but crystal clear. "I know that one," he muttered. And just like that, the air got heavier. He turned to the patrol officers. "Cuff him." That's Dale Cutler. He's wanted in Polk County, 2 counts of impersonating a public official, 1 attempted kidnapping, and a list of extortion charges tied to fake HOA enforcement scams. The second guy, barely conscious, had something jammed under his vest. The officers pulled it out carefully. Metal restraints. 2 loaded tranquilizer darts. And a fat stack of fake compliance documents, stamped with a forged county seal. The lead officer held up the papers. His face went tight. "They had a full setup," he said. "This wasn't random." Martinez gave a slow, grim nod. "No. This was organized. Targeted. They've been pulling this stuff in small towns, places where no one asks questions. Until now." I didn't say a word. Just turned to look at Lisa. Someone had wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. She hadn't spoken yet. But her eyes never left me. Not for a second. The truth was starting to surface, and it was worse than any of us thought. For a long moment we just stood there. Quiet. The porch bathed in that soft, fading light that comes right before night. That kind of light that makes everything feel a little more real. A little more permanent. Detective Martinez stood nearby, holding a plain white paper cup filled with black coffee. The steam from Martinez's coffee curled up into the cool evening air, slow and steady, like an exhale that didn't want to end. I sat across from him on one of those cheap folding chairs, back stiff, arms crossed, staring straight ahead, but not really seeing anything. My eyes were on the horizon, sure, but my mind was stuck somewhere else. Somewhere between what had just happened and what it all meant. The silence between us didn't feel weird. It felt necessary. Some days don't leave room for small talk. Then, finally, Martinez broke it. His voice was calm, even, like someone who'd worked deep in the system long enough to know how it really moved. "You know we can't arrest you," he said. "Not as a favor. Not out of pity. Just the truth. But the DA's office? They're gonna have to file something. That's just how it works. There'll be a case on paper." I turned my head, slow, letting those words settle in. "On paper," I repeated, then let out this short, dry laugh that had no warmth behind it. "They dragged my wife out like she was nothing. Like she wasn't even a person." I paused. Swallowed. If I'd come home 5 minutes later? I didn't finish. Didn't need to. Martinez didn't try to fill the silence. He didn't argue. Just looked down at his cup for a moment, then glanced over toward the porch steps. Lisa was still there, wrapped up in one of those thick fleece blankets the officers always carry for shock. But it wasn't helping. She clutched it tight, like armor. like she was holding herself together with fabric and willpower. Her eyes tracked every move we made, but her voice had barely made a sound since they found her. "I'd have done the same," Martinez said at last. His voice had that edge in it, tight, but real. "Any man with a pulse would've." Then he looked at me straight on. "But that doesn't mean it's gonna be easy. You need to be careful now, Jake. Real careful. We're gonna need a full report from you. Detailed, exact, clean. No heat, no holes." He leaned in slightly, just enough to make the next part stick. "If there's even one crack in the story, even a flicker of doubt, their lawyers are gonna twist it until no one remembers what those guys did in the first place." I felt my shoulders tighten, not from fear. From holding it in. From the weight of it all. I'd acted without hesitation. But now I had to explain it. Justify it. Wrap it all in paperwork and red tape. Still I nodded. Because I understood something about justice now. It doesn't always arrive in one clean piece. Sometimes, it shows up in fragments, truth, proof, process. And if that's what it took to make damn sure nobody ever laid a hand on my family again, then I'd write it all down, every breath, every second. This story didn't start with a headline. It started with a ripple. A neighbor across the street had recorded it, just 35 shaky seconds of video. A man holding a shotgun in his front yard. His wife, draped in a blanket behind him. Two unknown men on the ground, a black SUV with no license plates parked nearby. Nobody watching knew what had really happened. But they knew enough to feel it was big. And that was all it took. By nightfall, the video had blown up. Local news picked it up first. By the next morning, it was on every major network. Then came the digging. Journalists started tracing the faces of those so-called HOA enforcers. At first, nothing added up. No state records. No real HOA affiliations. No legal reason they should have been there at all. But as reporters kept pulling at the threads, a pattern started to show. These guys weren't new. They'd been spotted before, in security cam footage, doorbell videos, neighborhood watch reports. In Tampa, an elderly couple had been pressured to leave their home over phony code violations. In Phoenix, a single mom reported threats of forced eviction. In Henderson, Nevada, a retired Army vet was told to comply or be removed. Each time, they moved on before the law caught up. Each time, they vanished, leaving behind forged documents, copied signatures, property access codes, and just enough legal gray area to slip through the cracks. Same uniforms. Same nondescript trucks. Same fake compliance orders, printed to look official with bogus county seals. But behind all that, there was more. A network. Layers of shell companies. Shady real estate trusts. You couldn't tie it back to just one name. They called it distressed property acquisition. But really, it was theft, slick, organized, institutional theft. A whole operation built on fear, confusion, and pressure so fast it didn't give folks time to think straight. Their strategy was simple. They looked for families in transition, people behind on a couple payments, folks going through something, folks who wouldn't call a lawyer first. Then they'd show up, act like they were official, and bury them in threats and technical talk. And it worked. More than a dozen homes, gone, across 3 states. No eviction notices. No police reports. Just empty driveways and silence. Until I got in their way. That shaky video from my neighbor, the one where I was standing on the lawn with a shotgun, went everywhere. And once Lisa gave her statement, once Detective Martinez's team filed those arrest reports, everything cracked open. The man I disarmed turned out to be Dale Cutler, a former private contractor, with sealed court records in 2 states and active warrants in a 3rd. The second guy? Fake him, of course. But he was carrying tranquilizer darts, illegal restraints, and forged access codes to home alarm systems. They were both charged with multiple felonies before the sun even came up the next morning. But that was just the surface. As the investigation dug deeper, they started pulling up property transfer records, connecting these fake enforcement teams to shady companies that had been buying up homes dirt cheap. And when investigators looked closer, the same names kept popping up. On paperwork. On signatures. On notary stamps. Same so-called compliance officers. Over and over. This wasn't just some scattered scam. It was a machine, with money, a structure, and coordination across regions. Local governments started looking into it. Then the Fed stepped in. Housing regulators. Fraud units. The story that started as just one guy defending his wife became the core of a full-on interstate probe. And me? I didn't ask to be part of any of this. A few days later, I sat on my back porch, coffee gone cold in my hand, watching the news anchors say my name like they knew me. The Harris incident, they called it. The homeowner who stood his ground. But none of them were there when I turned onto my street and saw everything I'd rebuilt about to be ripped apart. None of them held that shotgun with shaking hands, or saw the blank, broken look in Lisa's eyes after it was over. Martinez came back, not alone this time. He brought federal agents in suits. They shook my hand, told me I'd done the right thing, that things would change, that there'd be consequences. But I wasn't buying it, not all the way. Systems don't change just because the headlines say they should. They change when people keep watching after the cameras leave. When folks keep asking questions. When they don't just nod along to whatever answer sounds best. That's what I hope for now. That people stay awake. Because the crack I made in their machine, it wasn't big enough yet. Not by a long shot. But it had started. And once something breaks, it's only a matter of time before the rest starts to fall apart. The trial lasted 2 long weeks. Every single day dragged heavier than the one before. From the moment I walked into that courtroom, I could feel it, all of it, pressing in. The polished wood. The echo of footsteps in the halls. The constant scratch of pens moving across legal pads. Even the silence had weight. Across from me sat the defense team. They were sharp. Clean suits. Polished shoes. Expressions that had been rehearsed in the mirror. They weren't loud. Weren't aggressive. They didn't deny what happened. They couldn't, not with the footage. Not with the statements. Not with the physical evidence. But they didn't have to argue the facts. Yeah, there were eyewitnesses. There were medical reports. But the defense? They leaned on tone. They painted me like I was out of control, reactive, reckless. Said I let adrenaline take over instead of thinking things through. They didn't call it what it was. They called it a tragic escalation. Like the 2 guys in tactical vests were just confused, not dangerous. They used still shots instead of video. Snippets of quotes instead of full testimony. All of it carefully stitched together to build a version of the story that danced just shy of reasonable doubt. But the truth? The truth was too loud to bury. The prosecution took their time. Built it piece by piece. No drama, just facts. First, they showed footage from Officer Klein's body cam, right when his squad car rolled onto Maple Drive. You could hear the siren wind down, see Lisa sitting on the porch in a blanket. Her eyes were empty. One sandal missing. Then they played the neighbor's security cam. 39 seconds of raw, uncut reality. Me stepping out of my truck. Me shouting warnings. Me aiming low, not to kill but to stop them. To protect her. Every frame said more than any lawyer ever could. Then came the medical testimony. Doctors talked about the bruising on Lisa's wrists, the swelling on her cheek, the signs of extreme emotional trauma. One trauma nurse, voice steady, no nonsense, testified that, in her expert opinion, the force I used that night stopped something that could have turned into irreversible harm. Nobody argued with her. Nobody even tried. After that, neighbors took the stand. One by one, they talked about what they heard, what they saw, what they felt. A retired teacher said she'd lived on that street for over 30 years and had never, ever seen anything like that night. A teenager said he'd heard Lisa screaming, choked and shaky, long before the sirens showed up. And then, Martinez. He was the last to testify. He took the stand with that quiet confidence he always had. No ego. Just presence. He walked through the scene. Explained how he recognized one of the suspects right there on my lawn. Detailed what they pulled from the SUV. Restraints, syringes, forged documents tied to a real estate fraud ring operating across multiple states. He didn't sugarcoat it. This wasn't chaos, he said. This wasn't some vigilante stunt. This was a man doing what nobody else could in that moment. And then all eyes turned to Judge Jenkins. The guy was known for being steady. A man who chose his words carefully, words people remembered long after the courtroom was cleared. That morning, you could have heard a pin drop as he stood up behind the bench. His robe shifted just slightly as he looked out across the room. Defense on one side, prosecution on the other, press lined up behind. His voice wasn't booming. It didn't need to be. It was solid. Grounded. "This court has reviewed all presented evidence," he began, "including witness testimony, expert analysis, and law enforcement documentation." He paused. What occurred that evening was not an act of aggression, but one of intervention. He let those words settle. Mr. Walker responded to an immediate and unlawful threat to his wife's safety. On his own property. Another pause. Longer this time. The force he used was proportionate, deliberate, and restrained. In fact, it is the opinion of this court that had Mr. Walker not returned home when he did, the consequences for his wife could have been significantly more severe. He looked straight ahead as he finished. This court finds no basis for criminal liability. No charges will be filed. The case is dismissed. And just like that, it was over. There was no cheer. No applause. Just stillness. The kind that fills the room after a storm finally lets go. I closed my eyes, not from relief, not from pride. Just pure exhaustion. For weeks, I'd been replaying every second of that night in my head, every move, every breath, every moment where things could have gone a different way. There were so many ways that night could have played out differently. But for the first time in a long while, I finally felt like I could breathe. I felt Lisa's hand before I saw it, her fingers resting gently on my shoulder. She stood behind me, wrapped in a light shawl, her posture straighter than it had been in days. The fear was still there in her eyes, just a trace of it, like a fading echo. But her hand was steady. She was standing again, breathing again. And for me, that was enough. 2 months had gone by since everything happened. But it didn't feel like a countdown. There was no big before and after. No clear break. It was more like a quiet return, little by little, to the kind of normal we used to take for granted. Grass growing along the fence again. Mail showing up on time. Lisa humming to herself while folding laundry near the window. But yeah, some things changed for good. We replaced the fence. It was taller now. Stronger. Reinforced posts. A new locking gate that clicked shut with a sound that, somehow, made my shoulders relax every time I heard it. The cameras around the house? Upgraded. Motion sensors. Live alerts. Cloud storage. Everything synced to my phone. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about peace of mind. But honestly, the biggest change didn't come from tech. It came from inside the house. I saw it in how Lisa moved through the kitchen without looking over her shoulder. In how she watered her flowers again, out front this time, head held high. In how she talked to neighbors at the market, taller, firmer, stronger. The fear wasn't gone. Not completely. But it had been replaced with something better. Awareness. Resolve. We didn't forget what happened. We just didn't let it rule us anymore. The story? It stuck around. Still showed up in the news every now and then. Reporters kept calling. Some wanted interviews. Others pitched podcasts. One guy even suggested a book, wanted to call it 30 Seconds Early. There were invites from talk shows. Panel discussions. Endorsement offers from security companies. A documentary producer even offered to fly a whole crew out to our house. I turned every single one down. Not because I was mad. Not even because I was tired. But because it just didn't sit right. What happened to us, it wasn't a headline or a brand. It wasn't a show. It was real. And it was ours. These days I spend more time out back. The workshop's cleaner than it's been in years. Tools are finally where they're supposed to be. Most afternoons, you can find me sitting in a folding chair, oiling the shotgun that, like it or not, became a symbol. Neighbors still stop by now and then. Some ask questions. Some just give a quiet nod and move on. But the ones who sit for a while, the ones who really listen, they always hear the same thing from me eventually. Simple. No drama. I'm not a hero, I tell them, running the cloth down the barrel with slow, steady hands. I just came home 30 seconds earlier than they expected. Then I'll glance toward the porch. And there she is. Lisa, curled up with her tea, watching the birds drift across the sky. Her legs tucked beneath her. Her eyes soft. And maybe, just maybe, that's what saved our lives.